A gentle clink of change can hide more than just loose quarters, it can unlock stories of shifting metals, minting milestones, and collectible treasures. Two everyday coins, the 1968 and the 1979 Washington quarters, seem unremarkable at first glance, yet each carries a twist that seasoned collectors and accidental hoarders alike prize. One was born amid a silver shortage that reshaped U.S. coinage forever, the other emerged in a brief resurgence of proof silver before disappearing just as quickly. Over the next several minutes, we'll explore why these two quarters have become conversation starters in living rooms, at club meetings, and on auction blocks. Let's begin with the 1968 Washington quarter. By this point, the familiar profile of George Washington had graced our quarters for nearly 4 decades, but a fundamental shift was underway. In 1965, rising silver prices forced the U.S. Mint to abandon the traditional 90% silver planchets used for circulation coins. For the next few years, clad coinage, layers of copper sandwiching a copper-nickel alloy, became the norm. That means the 1968 quarter you might have pocketed on the way to work is made of a copper-nickel alloy, not silver, yet it preserves the same weight and appearance. This subtle swap marked the end of an era, yet in hindsight it also set the stage for variety-driven collectability. Under the surface of that copper-nickel shell, the 1968 quarter's designer, though already long gone, left his mark. John Flanagan's finely detailed portrait of Washington, originally conceived in 1932 for the quarter's introduction, remained unchanged. Reverse imagery, too, held steady, an eagle with outstretched wings perched on a bundle of arrows above 2 olive branches. What varied slightly, however, were the rims and striking clarity, depending on which of the Denver or Philadelphia presses handled the batch. Collectors study these nuances, sharpness of detail around Washington's hair curls, the crispness of feathers, and the breadth of the rims, to judge a specimen's pedigree. Mintages reflect the quiet ubiquity of this issue, over 382 million struck at Philadelphia and nearly 257 million at Denver. But within those hundreds of millions lie fascinating anomalies. Take the 1968 D no mint mark error that turned up when a few coins skipped their identifying D stamp at the Denver Mint. Less than 100 examples are believed to exist in uncirculated condition, making them instant highlights in any collection, and capable of fetching several $100s at auction. Then there's the elusive double die obverse, where the date or lettering seems shadowed, a result of the die being impressed twice without proper realignment. Though only a handful of these have surfaced among tens of millions of regular strikes, when one does appear, collectors drop everything to inspect it. On the proof side, the San Francisco Mint produced just over 3.7 million proof quarters, all bearing the S Mint mark. While proofs lack the typical circulation marks, they often reveal cameo or deep cameo contrasts, those frosted devices standing out against mirrored backgrounds. A PCGS PR68 DCAM 1968 S quarter can bring in the low 4-figure range, while an extraordinary PR69 DCAM might nudge closer to $6,000, particularly when offered through premium venues like Heritage Auctions or Stack's Bowers. Current market trends show a fascinating spectrum of values. A typical circulated 1968 quarter with no notable error or exceptional eye appeal trades for face value up to a couple of dollars, just enough to interest someone beyond pocket change. But step into the uncirculated arena, and prices climb steeply. MS-63 pieces often fetch $3 to $5, while MS-65 graded by PCGS might command $7 to $12. An MS-67 can push $35 or more if it boasts full luster and strong eye appeal. Among auction records, a PCGS MS-68 DCAM specimen once hammered for over $2,200 in a 2022 spring sale, demonstrating how pristine surfaces and deep cameo contrast can transform a 1968 quarter into a high 4-figure prize. Behind those numbers lie stories that seasoned collectors relish sharing. One hobbyist recalls stumbling on a mint roll of 1968 quarters in a bank's coin dispenser in the late 90s. 25 flawless strikes later, he found himself invited to speak at a regional coin show, simply because he brought examples so crisp they looked freshly minted. Another tale involves a family heirloom coin tray uncovered in a grandmother's attic, loaded not with gold doubloons but with these very quarters, untouched since 1970, each still gleaming under decades of dust. Enthusiasts also chase registry sets maintained by PCGS and NGC, aiming for the highest graded examples within a population. A 1968 quarter slabbed as MS68 by PCGS sits among the top 5 on the registry, turning each new find into a potential set topper. Registry hunting adds an extra layer of excitement, whether you're battling an established set or establishing a newcomer profile that outperforms peers, there's a thrill in watching your registry rank climb after each acquisition. Of course, condition reigns supreme when assessing value. A quarter that has seen 4 decades of pockets, drawers, and piggy banks will show wear on Washington's cheek and the high points of the eagle's wings, dropping its value back toward face. Yet a specimen preserved in mint state, free of contact marks and retaining full original luster, can leap in grade and price, with even the smallest boost. A slabbed MS66 example, for instance, might trade for $85 or more, while the elusive MS68 shades into the multiple thousands, depending on who's bidding and which grading service authenticated it. Collectors also pay close attention to subtle modifiers. Full bands on the reverse bars of the eagle's wings indicate a strong strike. Cameo contrast, where frosted devices stand out against mirrored fields, shows die polish quality, and the presence of natural toning, which, if evenly distributed in attractive hues, can add a premium. One experienced dealer advises looking under bright LED light at a 45-degree angle. Those fine details and that flash of iris blue or purple toning can transform an ordinary roll find into something spectacular. Beyond the mainstream varieties lie the die cracks and repunched mint marks that appeal to challenge set collectors and specialists. A faint die crack running through the "In God We Trust" on the obverse or a repunched D on the reverse of a rare few can command curious bids among die variety aficionados. Though these may not always fetch 5-figure prices, they carry deep historical interest and are often the centerpiece of specialized exhibits at regional coin shows. Tracing auction catalogs reveals another nuance: provenance. Coins once owned by renowned collectors or exhibited at major shows often carry an extra premium. A 1968 quarter lot described as, from the Dr. Marcus assembly, fetched about 15% more than comparable examples simply graded by numerical grade alone. That edge of history, knowing that the coin once sat in a celebrated cabinet, can carry weight among the most dedicated enthusiasts. As our first chapter draws to a close, one thing becomes clear: the 1968 Washington quarter is far more than loose change. It's a snapshot of a pivotal moment in U.S. minting, a canvas for striking varieties, and a ticket to stories that span decades. Whether you're a registry set veteran chasing the top MS68, a die variety specialist hunting the faintest crack, or someone who simply discovers a roll of these quarters at face value, the journey reveals layers of history, artistry, and community. Soon, we'll turn our attention to its successor, the 1979 quarter, which burst onto the scene with its own surprises and challenges for the collector's eye. Stay tuned to uncover how a coin minted just 11 years later carries echoes of the past while forging its own legacy. Let's move ahead to the 1979 Washington quarter, another coin that, on the surface, looks just like the pocket change most of us used for soda machines or toll booths. But look closer, and 1979 becomes a key year for collectors, not because of low mintages or silver content, but because of its transitional quirks, its proof run at San Francisco, and the subtle differences that separate the ordinary from the exceptional. By 1979, the U.S. Mint was riding the tail end of the bicentennial coin boom and entering an era marked by modernization and increased production. This was also the first full year the Mint issued Susan B. Anthony dollars, which indirectly affected quarter production as presses and public attention temporarily shifted to that new denomination. Still, over 1.1 billion Washington quarters were struck in 1979, making it one of the highest mintage years in the coin's history. And yet, within that massive sea of copper-nickel coins, a few standouts demand attention. The basic design remained familiar. John Flanagan's portrait of George Washington still commanded the obverse, though by now the dies were showing signs of age. Some examples, especially from Philadelphia, appear with slightly weaker strikes or softness around the hair and jawline. The reverse continued to feature the heraldic eagle perched on arrows above olive branches. What changed was less about appearance and more about details, dye varieties, mint mark styles, and the way proofs were treated at the San Francisco Mint. Let's talk about those mint marks, because this is where things get interesting. In 1979, the San Francisco Mint struck proof coins, as usual, but it did so using two different styles of the S mint mark. These would later be categorized as Type 1 and Type 2, with the latter being scarcer and more sought after. The Type 1S is more bulbous, almost looking like a figure 8 or a blobby dollar sign. Type 2, by contrast, is clearer, crisper, with sharply defined loops, much more elegant and professional in appearance. At the time, the Mint didn't officially announce the change, so the discovery of two distinct proof types created quite a buzz in the collecting world. Today, the 1979 S-Type 2 proof quarter is considered one of the key proof varieties of the modern era. With fewer than 3 million of them believed to exist, compared to over 20 million Type 1s, it stands out in high-end proof sets. PCGS PR69 DCAM examples of the Type 2 regularly sell for $250 to $400, depending on the overall eye appeal, and PR70 DCAM coins, while extremely rare, have reached well over $2,000 in private sales. These aren't coins you'll find in circulation, but they absolutely can turn up in old proof sets bought decades ago and tucked away in drawers. On the circulation side, Denver and Philadelphia handled the majority of quarter production. Denver quarters carry the D mint mark, and Philadelphia quarters, for the first time since 1968, carried no mint mark at all. Interestingly, this was the last year Philadelphia would omit its mint mark on the quarter. In 1980, they began using a P, making 1979 the end of a minor but important era for modern collectors. So how do you know if you've got something valuable in your hands? With circulation 1979 quarters, condition is everything. Because of the enormous mintages, over 515 million at Denver and more than 643 million in Philly, finding high-grade coins is tough simply due to how many saw immediate and hard use. Circulated examples, even with light wear, typically hold no premium. But step up to mint state and the value curve becomes much more interesting. In MS65, a 1979 D quarter is worth around $10 to $15. The Philadelphia version in that same grade tends to go slightly higher, closer to $15 to $25, because Philly coins are known for slightly weaker strikes and fewer top-end survivors. Now here's the kicker, the PCGS population for MS67 or better is shockingly low. An MS67 plus 1979 P can sell for over $1,000 depending on auction timing. The all-time record for a 1979 quarter was set when an MS68 1979 D brought in more than $3,000 in a 2021 heritage sale, and that coin had perfect surfaces and blazing luster, exactly the kind of quarter that grabs serious collector attention. Even without silver content, proof and mint state quarters from 1979 gain value from rarity at the top end. And then there's toning. Collectors today pay big premiums for original rainbow toning, particularly on proof coins. A naturally toned 1979 S-Type 2 with target toning, deep blues and golds radiating from the rim, can fetch a premium up to 3x or 4x its typical value. But beware, artificial toning has become more common, so experienced buyers look for signs of authenticity, gradual transitions between color bands, no speckling, and a natural shimmer that's difficult to fake. Another fascinating layer involves transitional errors. Because the U.S. Mint was working across multiple denominations and dye varieties, there were a few mix-ups in 1979. Most notable are off-center strikes and broad strikes. While not unique to this year, their frequency in 1979 and the sheer volume of quarters produced means a fair number of these errors exist. A dramatic off-center strike that still shows a full date and mint mark can command anywhere from $75 to $300, depending on the severity and overall condition. A double-struck 1979 quarter recently sold for $475 in a private dealer transaction. Double strikes, especially if both impressions are visible and clean, remain highly desirable. Some collectors also focus on full-strike varieties, quarters where all the details of Washington's hair, the lettering, and the eagle's feathers are fully and crisply struck. These are hard to come by in any year, but 1979 seems to have an especially low yield of such examples. When they do show up, they're often snapped up quickly by those assembling registry sets or focused on modern gems. The backstory of the 1979 proof sets is equally compelling. Many were originally sold through the U.S. Mint's mail-order system for under $10 per set. Today, unopened sets from that era are often sold in bulk by estate handlers or through online coin dealers. The trick? Knowing what to look for. Some savvy collectors buy up these sets not for the full collection but to cherry-pick potential Type 2s mint mark coins. That quarter alone, if it grades high enough, can more than pay for the entire lot. There's even a little cultural nostalgia attached to 1979 coins. Think about it, this was the first year a woman appeared on U.S. circulating currency. Thanks to the Susan B. Anthony dollar, inflation was raging, and coin-operated arcade machines were everywhere. A 1979 quarter might have launched a Space Invaders game or opened a soda bottle at a roadside diner. These stories don't increase a coin's numismatic value, of course, but they add a certain resonance, especially for collectors who lived through that time. It connects memory with metal in a way that goes beyond price guides. Now that we've explored the stories behind both the 1968 and 1979 Washington quarters, we can step back and see the bigger picture, how tiny changes in minting, design, and historical context create ripples that echo across the numismatic world. 2 decades, 2 coins, and a universe of collector value in between. Whether you're hunting for high-grade sleepers, variety-rich proofs, or simply appreciate the history hidden in everyday pocket change, these quarters have plenty to offer, and they're just the beginning.